Good morning, everyone, and welcome back for the third in this series of Portraits of Faith, where we talk to members of our congregation and get their story and the story of what God's been doing in their lives. I'm joined today by Isobel, whom most of you will know and know well. She leads the singing at the second service and works as a vet here in Peterborough. Isobel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start with an easy question. Have you always lived in the Peterborough area?
No, I haven't. I came here first for a job interview in 2017. I grew up in Hertfordshire, about an hour south. Got to my last couple of months of university and thought, right, I'd better get a job now then.
Was there any particular reason that brought you to Peterborough?
Absolutely none. Absolutely no logic, no draw. Just I applied for 3 jobs, got 1, ended up here.
Well, we're very glad to have you. Have you always been a Christian? Would you always have said you were?
No, I haven't. I would have spent most of my childhood laughing at you if you asked me that question. I came from a household where if you saw somebody with a placard about end times on the street, as soon as you were past them, my mother would put on a Monty Python housewife voice and say, "The end is nigh, repent and join the Lord, this is the word of a nutter." So, you know, that was the tone towards religion that I grew up with in all its shades and flavours.
And when did that change?
Not rapidly, as one might expect. I was quite a bullied adolescent. I didn't have many friends at this point in my life. And age 12, there was one girl who had absolutely no reason to be kind to me and accepting of me, but was anyway. Her name was Bethany. She and I had quite a lot in common, other than the fact that she was much higher up the social ladder than me. We both were quite driven. She wanted to practice human medicine, I wanted to practice veterinary medicine. We respected each other's intellect. We got to the point of, as soon as we got test scores back, we would look at our own and then look at each other's, see who had won that week. The thing that didn't join up for this with me was that Bethany was a Christian, loudly and proudly a Christian. Now that didn't make any sense to me because religion is for stupid people. And Bethany was clearly not that stupid, judging her by her biology test results. So I thought, okay, this can't be too difficult. I will show her the error of her ways by logic and reasoning, and then the cognitive dissonance goes away and the laws of my world are followed again. Anyone who has worked in apologetics knows very quickly what's likely to happen if you try to argue somebody out of their faith as an atheist. I was a stubborn kid, nevertheless. It was probably 18 months of 2 or 3 times a week, me throwing curveballs at her and the most absurd and difficult questions I could think of, and her getting the better of me every single round before I even began to wonder if I was wrong. It was several more months before I swallowed my pride enough to admit it. Not that Bethany didn't know a long time before that. She realised probably about 6 weeks after I did that things were not quite as they had been, and the tone of my questions changed a little bit from trying to break down a wall to trying to peer over it and see exactly what was on the other side. I remember the first time I ever in my life had willingly tried to pray, to speak to something that I couldn't see, was half term of year 10, first year of GCSEs or O-levels, depending on what generation you're in. May half term in Yorkshire on holiday, sitting in my bedroom, and I didn't feel like I was talking to a wall. With hindsight, I wouldn't say that I was feeling the presence of God in any very strong way, but I didn't feel like I was talking to a wall. At that point, I conceded enough to say to Bethany when the holidays were over, okay, I'll come to church with you. I was also, however, too proud to tell my exceedingly atheist mother where I was going. This is on record as one of the stupidest things that I've done, by the way. The first 2 weeks I went to church, I lied to my mother about where I was going. This was not a good idea. I went to church. I felt the presence of God very viscerally and very powerfully, and I could not any longer, with any reason at all, other than sticking my fingers in my ears, deny his existence and his power and his right to be my master and to rule my life. So that day, I prayed the sinner's prayer, I submitted my life to God, and I've never regretted it.
Thank you. How is life different now as a Christian? What's changed and what stayed the same?
My family have stayed exactly the same. They're a bit more careful about openly ridiculing religion if I'm in the room. They are still, all of them, devoutly atheist and accept that this is the thing that Isobel needs, that helps Isobel. Doesn't have any bearing on the rest of us. Big strong line over here. Things that have changed. In periods of uncertainty, anyone who knows me well knows that I'm a panicker by nature. Always have been, and getting slowly better. There was a period of very rapid improvement after I came to faith, because actually believing in a God who loves and a God who is able is, at least to a rational brain, incompatible with panic. A panicking brain is not a rational brain, so it doesn't always stop me from panicking. But on a base level, to know that somebody who cares about you has control over the outcome makes periods of uncertainty much easier to bear.
Thank you. If you could give one piece of advice to somebody who wouldn't call themselves a Christian yet, but is looking at the Christian faith and trying to make their mind up about it, what would that be?
This is not the thing that convinced me, interestingly. I couldn't name a single argument that convinced me. But the thing now on which I hang my faith is the empty tomb. Is the question of, if Jesus did not rise from the dead, who moved the stone and what did they do with the body? I've had a lot of arguments with people about this, and I cannot find, then or now, another plausible explanation for what happened in the weeks and months after Jesus' crucifixion, in which he did not rise from the dead. So consider the empty tomb and consider the empty cross. And if something there doesn't line up on a rational worldview, on a rational atheistic worldview, maybe something in there needs to bend.
Thank you. What advice would you give to a Christian seeking to keep going in their faith amidst day-to-day struggles? What would one piece of advice be?
I think it would be cling to scripture, because the narrative of God's people is not usually one of an easy life, and most of the authors of scripture knew that. And most of scripture is not about praising God when it's easy, it's about praising God when it's hard. I can't remember, I think it's Isaiah 44 somebody gave to me recently. I'm just going to check that it is Isaiah 44. No, it isn't. Sorry.
Can you remember the words?
It's the one about, it's the one that ends with, "Do not be afraid, for I have redeemed you, I have called you by your name, you are mine.
When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned." Yes, yes. It's a great promise given to the people of Israel when they're facing exile and facing the return from exile. It's definitely in the second half of Isaiah and somewhere in the 40s, but I can't remember the chapter off the top of my head.
If
you're watching this, just go away and read the second half of the book of Isaiah, and you'll find it in there somewhere.
We can use for the rest of the day.
Keep you going. Something to do during lockdown. Well, thank you very much, Isobel, for joining us, and all the best to you as you go on in your Christian life and in your work and in your ministry. Thank you.